There is no denying the effect Street Fighter II had on the world back in the early 90s. It was all everyone I knew talked about at that time. We would meet up at the local arcade, liquor store, 7-Eleven, even some laundromats had arcade machines back then. Wherever Street Fighter II was at, that's where we went. We would slap our quarter down and wait for next, and that's really what it was about at that time. And I remember we all waited and were super excited for the home ports to release. I remember going with my best friend at the time to pick up a copy for the Super Nintendo at the mall. Everywhere was sold out, but there was a Capcom kiosk that I believe was an official Capcom store. I mean, I remember vividly they were on the second floor of our local mall and only sold Capcom games and merchandise, and they had like a big Capcom logo as their store logo. I mean, they had a copy left. He grabbed it, we went home, amazing stuff, playing Street Fighter 2 in the luxury of your own home, right? But what about on the go, like on road trips, at school, wherever you could sneak in a match? We had that crappy Tiger Electronics version at that time, which I still have mine to this day. I think I just sat there playing it, trying my hardest to imagine it was actually good. Maybe I enjoyed it a little bit, but it would have been amazing to have some ports of the game available on the handhelds that were out there at that time, like the Game Boy. So that's what we're taking a look at today. The Nintendo handheld ports of various Street Fighter games. Most of these I played back around when they were released, but were they any good? Were they timely? Did they fit in to where people were excited for them? So first up, I'm going to kind of go in order here. Street Fighter 2 for the Game Boy. Now, the arcade version came out in 1991. The Game Boy version came out in 1995. I believe the Super Nintendo version came out around a year after the arcade version, about a year. So this port, it was about 4 years later, few years after the Super Nintendo version. Was it too little, too late? We had 9 selectable characters. This was kind of a weird one. So we were missing Vega, E Honda, and Dalsum, but it was kind of strange. It really wasn't your standard Street Fighter 2. It's kind of a mishmash type of thing. We did have Super Game Boy enhancements. That was kind of neat. And it actually allowed you to play 2 players through the Super Nintendo instead of having to link up. But the problem with this game, it was kind of jerky. The animation was like kind of all over the place. You were missing some frames of animation. The hit detection was a little poor. But the sprites for the characters, they looked decent. The detail was fairly nice in my opinion. The music and stages, they were unique to the characters. We only had 2 buttons in this game. Obviously, it was for the Game Boy. But the longer you press a button, it's going to register as a stronger attack. I never really got the feel for this down, though. And other ports of these games, these Street Fighter games, are fairly similar. We're limited. These are 6-button arcade games, and we're, playing them on a 2-button machine. But, it is what it is. You just made do with what you had. With this version of the game, there was like kind of a delay when attacking and doing special moves. It was something you had to get used to. It was definitely nowhere as fluid as the arcade game or the Super Nintendo version. And yeah, having like those Super Game Boy enhancements was nice, but if you had a Super Nintendo, you just play Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo instead, right? On the go, does this kind of work? It does. It's not the worst game I ever played, but it's not the greatest port of the game for any system. It's probably one of the worst ones out there, but there is some fun to be had. Now we're going to be moving on up. A few years later, we got Street Fighter Alpha for the Game Boy Color. Now this is one out of this whole list of games that we're talking about that I don't ever remember playing. And I kind of wish I did, because this game is actually pretty good. So, Street Fighter Alpha, it's the first Street Fighter Alpha. It came out for the Game Boy Color in 2000. The arcade version came out in 1995, so this is a little bit of a wait here for a handheld port, right? So we had smaller, less detailed characters than Street Fighter 2 on the Game Boy, but obviously everything was in color. We had the entire character list being present, including the secret characters as well. Now, music is lacking a little in variety. It sounds decent, but the sound effects are a little grating. They're not very good. The gameplay, on the other hand, is very smooth and fairly fast. We do have a lack of variety with backgrounds. Some are recolors, like you might play on the same background a couple times and they're just recolored. It's the day and night type of cycle thing, but this was true of the original arcade version as well. You do have some minor animations in the background, so that's pretty cool. No multiplayer present in this one, but still as like a single player experience on the go. This one, like, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought this one was really good. And like I said, this is the one I never played out of any of these games here, as far as the handheld ports back around when they first came out. This one's definitely worth taking a look at. Now, moving up, around the same time actually, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo Revival for the Game Boy Advance. So this came out in 2000. Now, new challengers of Super Street Fighter 2, that came out in 1993, so it's kind of a long time, right? The turbo version of the game came out in 94, so this is a good, 6 to 7 years for this port to come out, but obviously we didn't have the Game Boy Advance back then when the arcade version came out. So this Turbo Revival, it's actually an exclusive version for the Game Boy Advance, which, I mean, you could kind of say all these versions are exclusive versions because they were like really not put on anything else. I mean, I think this game went to like one of the virtual consoles, but you know what I mean? Like at the time it was exclusive to that handheld. All of these were. So with this one, you have redrawn artwork, new menu screen, UI changes, and new windscreens, voice samples for the characters from the arcade versions. You have new stage backgrounds being added. The bonus stages are back added into the game, and they're pretty damn fun. And the one cool thing, the burning character animation, it has been redone to use the character's own art with like flames added to it. So that was pretty cool. You got all the characters present. This one, I noticed like the graphics. Yeah, of course, all of these ports, these handheld ports, you're going to be missing some frames of animation, stuff like that. With these Game Boy Advance games, not as much as on the original Game Boy, but I do notice like there's some weird, almost like screen tear action, and I thought, oh, maybe this was just from my recording of the game, but no, it's just the way the game was. Not present everywhere, just certain stages, the way certain things scroll, maybe the way the assets and the backgrounds were placed and whatnot. It just kind of looks weird, and then when you do your specials or supers, the screen kind of gets a little glitchy looking. I mean, overall, the game is pretty damn good for the Game Boy Advance, but yeah, I mean, it's not the cleanest presentation of the game, but with it being an exclusive version with a lot of modes, a lot of cool stuff going on here, it's definitely worth taking a look at, especially with, like the Analog Pocket out, which is where most of my footage came from. These are games that you could play on the Analog Pocket and really get a good look and feel for them. Worth checking these games out. So moving on to the next one, Street Fighter Alpha 3 for the Game Boy Advance. This one, when it first came out, I mean, it surprised me. Like, this game can run on the Game Boy Advance with all the characters. Freaking nuts. Came out in 2002, where the arcade version came out in 1998. So a few year wait there. That's fine. Street Fighter Alpha 3, yeah, we were playing it on, all sorts of other consoles at the time, but having a competent, like, port on the Game Boy Advance, if you had a Game Boy Advance, was freaking amazing. And yeah, this port was competent. It's nuts how well this was done. So you have all the characters present. You are missing some stages in the game, but everything it's miniaturized. So some cuts are going to be made. We still have 13 stages to fight on though, and there are some minimal background animations present. All the fighting styles are here, the turbo settings, everything is here. The game runs smooth, fantastically well. Worth playing this game. Street Fighter Alpha 3, probably the best fighting game on the Game Boy Advance. I mean, it's amazing. I love Alpha 3. Now, the final game that I want to talk about, and I kind of added this one, even though, I mean, does it fit? I mean, we're not talking about a Game Boy anymore, but it is a Nintendo handheld, and that is Super Street Fighter 4 3D Edition. This was a launch title for the 3DS, and I was blown away. I was addicted to Street Fighter 4 at the time. Now, having this ported to the 3DS with the way, yeah, it's a 6-button game. You do have access to 6 buttons, but a little cramped and whatnot. I could never really 100% play as well on it as I could on like the 360 or the PS3 at the time. But it was amazing seeing the graphics, how well everything was done. So for Street Fighter 4, And I just actually, yesterday, before I even recorded this video, I was playing Street Fighter 4 in the arcade, just bringing me back, man. Like when this game came out, Street Fighter 4, I freaking loved it. But the original arcade version, it came out in 2008, and then Super Street Fighter 4 and the arcade edition, I believe, came out a couple years later, 2010. So this one was like, a year after all those versions came out. So not bad. I mean, launch title for the 3DS, and in my opinion, the best game at launch. You had single player, online multiplayer, all the characters were included, all sorts of crazy stuff going on here, a lot of different modes. It really did feel like playing the home console version miniaturized. Now, not to say it's all great, because there are some flaws here with this game. Everything's 3D graphics, and it looks good, but you'll start seeing in the backgrounds, like, you'll have characters and whatnot, whereas like these previous games we talked about, you'll have some minimal animations and whatnot. And Street Fighter 4 on the 3DS, like anything that would have been animated in the home console or the arcade version, it's just static. Like you'll just have people standing there, like 3D rendered animals and stuff, and they're just standing there like mannequins. Like that's a little annoying. I mean, I guess it was kind of a feat getting this game up and running and looking so good on the 3DS to begin with all the costumes and characters and stuff at the time. It was amazing, but yeah, that kind of takes you out of it a little bit. Now, the control options, like I was saying earlier, it's kind of hard for me to get used to, playing this way, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. It does have where you can like use the touch screen to cheat and do like quick moves and whatnot. So that was an option there. Now, I mean, I love Street Fighter, and all these games, I did enjoy playing them for this video. Even the one for the original Game Boy was still kind of fun. There's a lot of fun to be had here, and I just wanted to share this, with you guys, my thoughts on these games. I think they're all fairly competent. They have their, pros and cons type of thing. They're portable versions of awesome arcade games, and I always loved that, having arcade games at home. So having arcade games on the go, a whole other level. Some of these games, when they came out, they're, I think maybe too little too late type of thing, but they were still pretty fun. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. And with that said, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.